In our time reviewing the history of the Spectre, one event has clearly stood out among others. Today we're talking about the Crisis of Infinite Earths, and the changes it made for the character of the Spectre. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to Comic Island so you don't miss the latest of our videos about comic book characters new and old. No, wait, oh god! It was the greatest crisis reality had ever known. World after world suddenly found itself at the mercy of a being from a dark realm called the Antimatter Universe. That being's name was the Anti-Monitor, and he would not rest until every reality but his was destroyed. It was a time that would test the mettle of every superhero known to ever exist by that point, including the Spectre himself. It was the Crisis of Infinite Earths. Through extensive testing and planning, two beings stood at the forefront of opposing the Anti-Monitor. First was the Anti-Monitor's regular matter counterpart, the Monitor, and second was his apprentice, a woman named Lila, also known as Harbinger. The test of the Spectre and the JSA in the 1940s back on Earth 2 was one of many this duo conducted across the multiverse and the timeline, all with the goal of determining which heroes would better serve in the battle to save all of reality. Because of these tests and plans, it was decided not to involve the Spectre early on in the days of the Crisis of Infinite Earths, unlike many other superheroes. In fact, he seemed to have been kept largely unaware of these events until it was far too late for the Spirit to do much to stop reality from falling apart. In spite of many various attempts by these other superheroes initially drafted into the fray, the Anti-Monitor moved with devastating speed, destroying all but 5 universes, each of which were left hanging by a thread. The final 5 remaining Earths drifted together, doomed to collide in an event that would end everything known to exist in the realms of matter. It was only at this point that the Spectre was brought in to help with the crisis, along with a legion of other superheroes from across the multiverse. Though in the past, where a crisis might only involve 2 or 3 universes vying for survival, and the Spectre was usually the most powerful weapon available to any of those individual worlds involved, here, in the Crisis of Infinite Earths, the Spectre was practically useless. Just like the ghostly being's last encounter with a creature from the Antimatter Universe, the Spectre and his magic were largely inert against the Anti-Monitor and his wave of destructive antimatter that was wiping out regular reality. It was only after one of Spectre's friends from Earth 1, Barry Allen, sacrificed himself to destroy the Anti-Monitor's antimatter cannon that the Spectre was finally able to act. With the cannon's antimatter energies dissipated in the regular universe, the Spirit's phenomenal powers returned in full. Unfortunately, these powers came at a time when all they could really do was inform the hero how dire their situation had become. The loss of the antimatter weapon had stalled the Anti-Monitor's plans, but hardly halted the being himself, and even as things stood, they were all doomed. The Spectre let a cry of frustration out with his full power reverberating throughout the dwindling remnants of reality. The multiverse had fallen, and the most powerful superhero who had ever lived was never given the opportunity to try and stop it. His frustration was understandable, compounded even further by the fact that the surviving heroes and villains were at the time unaware that the Anti-Monitor was still alive and keen on destroying all of reality. The Spectre came upon these mortals battling each other over the surviving scraps of existence, and quickly put this to a halt. He rallied both sides to his cause, explaining that the Anti-Monitor traveled back in time and planned to strike down the multiverse at the time of its birth. However, the good news was it gave those of the regular matter universe a rare opportunity, as it was at the dawn of time that the Anti-Monitor was spawned into this existence as well. At the Spectre's advice, hero and villain alike agreed to work together on a plan that would not only save reality, but potentially undo the Anti-Monitor's actions before they even began. Unfortunately, the villains failed to live up to their end of the plan. The Anti-Monitor's creation happened uninterrupted, while the villainous being arrived and prepared to strike down all of existence in one fell blow. In this critical moment, it was only the Spectre who was able to stand against the Anti-Monitor. These two beings entered into an epic cosmic struggle as the birth of the multiverse raged around them. Other magical superheroes like Dr. Fate lent the Spectre their combined strength, but also got the impression that this had virtually no effect on a struggle between beings this powerful over energies this primordial. This pivotal moment ended in a cataclysmic explosion that would forever define the history of the Spectre and the multiverse around him. Though heroes and villains of matter failed to stop or undo the actions of the Anti-Monitor, A single precious world and universe around it survived this apocalypse thanks to the Spectre. Where there had once been infinite worlds, now there was one. But on the other hand, where there once stood to be nothingness, instead, matter, existence, and life prevailed over nothingness. And though it was all thanks to the Spectre, he cannot be credited with bringing the crisis to a true end. For this battle left the Spectre comatose and unresponsive, while the Anti-Monitor survived, and was prepared to strike down this final universe. Luckily, a number of other superheroes, and even some surviving villains, all worked together to bring the Anti-Monitor down once and for all. Though the Spectre was unable to regain consciousness for this final battle, he still proved vital in this victory, as the superheroes were able to tap into his celestial energies, aiding in this final fight. The Spectre proved invaluable in saving reality, but it was only a small drop of life compared to what was once an infinite ocean of existence. The costs were dire, and for many, it meant major changes to their life and history that would take place as they learned to live on this new Earth. Meant to be a rough amalgamation of the many variations of the planet that had once existed. This world largely resembled Earth 1, but with elements from other worlds, particularly the history of Earth 2, incorporated into it. For a being like the Spectre, an Earth 2 being who had been living on Earth 1 for some time, these changes were minimal at first. For many of his old friends at the JSA and other natives of Earth 2, these changes would be unsettling and far deeper, as these heroes suddenly felt redundant and unneeded relative to Earth 1's much younger Justice League of America. With the JSA's numbers dwindling and now, in the wake of a crisis at an all-time low, the heroes of this group were left feeling a sense of despair. They unanimously agreed to disband the Justice Society once and for all, with most members set to retire. Just as they were about to make that decision final, a disheveled version of the Spectre approached the team. While the baffled Dr. Fate wondered how the most powerful being of the higher cosmos could be laid waste like this, the Spirit spoke out, claiming to be the universe itself and that they were all dying. With that, he collapsed in the Sorcerer's arms. The alarmed team was unable to wake the Spectre, nor could they detect a pulse on him, but they were familiar enough with his nature to know that a lack of a pulse is a pretty normal thing for this superhero. The Spectre stirred and managed to show Dr. Fate a vision before vanishing, having done what he had traveled billions of miles to do. He then exploded in a furious display of spiritual energy. Dr. Fate shared his vision he received from the Spectre with the rest of the team, of a past adventure the group was involved in back in 1945. Then, while attending the funeral of FDR, the team saw the sky itself being torn apart. The Spectre was able to determine the cause of this phenomenon was from Berlin, and the heroes raced off to learn what was happening. The team discovered this was the doing of none other than Hitler himself, who had found a powerful magical artifact called the Spear of Destiny. The JSA was then confused to see the outcome of the story that had supposedly happened in the past. The Fuhrer was able to wield the spear and destroy not just the JSA, but the entire Earth. Obviously, nobody on the team remembered such an event happening, nor did it make any sense to them. But it seemed as though reality was catching up to the story itself, as in the present day, the sky too was being torn asunder, and it fit with the Spectre's story of all of reality falling apart around them. To resolve this, the JSA was able to travel back in time courtesy of Dr. Fate, and they were able to resolve this paradox, though many among them fell in the process in this deadly mission, as Nazis were able to summon beings of Norse mythology. Though the surviving JSA members prevailed against both the forces of Valhalla and the Third Reich, the powerful demon of fire Surtur stood ready to finish off the rest of the JSA. However, Dr. Fate was able to call upon the Spectre's powers, as the spiritual superhero had always existed largely out of the normal framework of time. Using that power, Fate was able to restore the JSA, defeat Surtur, and restore the timeline as it once was, though it left the sorcerer imprisoned in Valhalla. The Spectre then appeared before Dr. Fate, explaining that he shared his powers with the sorcerer to ensure all this would happen. They talked about the Spectre's battle against the darkness in heaven, which apparently involved only a small amount of the being's true power, compared to the full extent of his abilities shown in the Crisis of Infinite Earths. Claiming he would now vanish from all of mankind's history, the Spectre brought Dr. Fate back to the real world with the others, before allegedly disappearing from existence once and for all. However, the Spectre would be wrong about this. Both him and Jim Corrigan would find themselves on a new world, with new rules, new origins, and a new history to contend with. On this new Earth, the Spectre was remade, initially with an updated version of his history, taking place in 1940, where he was still part of the JSA. But eventually, with a version of Jim Corrigan that largely represented his history of both Earths 1 and 2. And on this new world, there was plenty of vengeance for both men to inflict on evildoers. We'll continue this major thread in the life of the Spectre next time, as he once again gets a solo series, although this one lasts considerably longer than last time around. I don't really know much about it beyond that, although I've heard some interesting things, and I'm looking forward to it. And until then, I'll see you guys next time here on Comic Island.